Okay, this is going to be a long one. I wish my cock was half as long as this video is going to be. So what I would do is I'd get yourself a coffee, get bedded in, get one of them fucking duvet suits, you know, that you can sit down and watch this video too. I want to talk about 4 different characters. Let's call them YouTube characters if you like, because they've all got a YouTube presence. 2 with a very strong YouTube presence, that's Thunderfoot and Anita Sarkeesian. 2 with a lesser presence but very relevant here. Bewildered Ape, who is central to all of this, and Jenny McDermott, whose video has actually been the kind of final straw that's broke the back of this particular camel and led to this video. I had a month last month, right? I'm not even going to try and keep this brief. I had a month last month where it was proper sort of YouTube atheist fare. It was good hearty country fare. It was like a kind of ploughman's lunch and a brown beer. At a country pub, and today this is more kind of McDonald's with a couple of fucking Alco pops rammed into your back pockets. That's kind of where we're at. Okay, so I suppose the first thing is, how does all this tie together? And I want to talk about all those 4 people in turn, and I'll come to the order of those in a minute. But kind of the thing that draws it all together, it starts from this fact that Thunderfoot's father, Thunderfoot, has revealed over the past few months that his father has cancer. And I suppose I ought to, before I go any further, just give my thoughts on that, which is that there are certain points where you kind of draw a line in the sand there. You even see that on politics and politicians who can't fucking stand one another. If you look at the House of Commons, Labour and Conservative, they're fucking tearing chunks out of one another, but you'd never hear a Labour leader say, oh, David Cameron, yes, your 6-year-old handicapped son has just dropped dead. Fucking wanker. Serves you right, Cameron, you total tosspot. Right, they don't do that, do they? When it comes to certain things such as that, all you get is sympathy, and hopefully heartfelt sympathy, because there becomes a time where you take those issues of disagreement and you put them to one side. And I am damn sure if PZ Myers' father had cancer, right, or somebody else that I really dislike online, that there is no way that I would try and gain anything on the back of that. All I would want to say is, PZ, right, doesn't matter what disagreements we have, I'm genuinely sorry that your father's had cancer. That's a terrible thing, and I wish, you know, if it ends badly for him, that it happens in the most painless way possible, and you have my sympathies there. That's as far as I would fucking want to go with that. That's me personally. I can't answer for everybody else. But Bewildered Ape made a satirical video based on Thunderfoot's father having cancer, and Jenny McDermott made a video backing up Bewildered Ape's satirical video. More on that in a bit, but that's the basic structure of it. Now, what I know is, if I make a video, I know this because it happened about 6 months ago when Bewildered Ape made an open letter to Thunderfoot's employer, and I made a video calling that out, and by implication there I was defending Thunderfoot, even though the fact that it was Thunderfoot that was the target was kind of immaterial. It could have been any fucker who'd been the target there. It was the action that I was calling out. For the 6 months that's followed, I've been accused of being Thunderfoot's champion or something. Quite why I'd want to champion Thunderfoot specifically, I don't know. There's a whole load of things that I disagree with Thunderfoot about. In the 7 years that I've been on YouTube, I can count on the fingers of no hands how many things that Thunderfoot has done for me. So quite why I would want to do that, I don't know. But what I will do then is make sure that my criticisms of Thunderfoot are first. Right, let's do those first, so nobody can say that I've took them in at the end. So I've got 2 main criticisms of Thunderfoot recently. The first of those, there was a drama, you may have been aware of it, involving an SJW community here on YouTube and centering around 3 characters, I suppose, well, several characters, but notably extremely boring and Sequester Zone, and then peripherally somebody called JJ Talks, of which a little bit more in a second. But there was this drama that took place. I didn't make a video involving this drama. A split had taken place within this community, and it was all a real storm in a teacup kind of thing, not for those involved but for everybody else. I didn't get involved in it because I didn't think it was worthwhile to get involved in it. From the perspective of somebody like Thunderfoot, I've got to say it's one of those things. If you want these groups to just go wrong and disintegrate, sometimes the best thing to do is just to fucking stand back. If you're as hated as you are and you get involved in it, the only thing that you could possibly achieve is a chance of making a focal point, of you being a point of reconciliation. But that isn't really my criticism of him. My criticism of him was that his video was just so fucking puerile and immature. His defence in his comments, well, this is also lulz worthy. I couldn't resist. I just have to say, if you took the Thunderfoot of 5 or 6 years ago and brought him forward in time and showed him that video and had him talk to himself now, I think he would probably say, what the fuck has happened here? How has my channel sunk to making a video on this because it's so lulz worthy I couldn't resist? It kind of typified what's gone on there, just how low it sunk that he made that video. And I don't expect Thunderfoot to take that off me, but in his comment section was a comment from Wildwood Claire, and you couldn't get more a more grounded person than Claire, who just tells it as it is. And she's got no time for this kind of shit, and she's got no time apparently for SJWs. That's what I get over the comments that she's made the last couple of years. So it's not as if all these people are her friends. And she said to Thunderfoot, this is just pathetic, this is puerile, this is really immature, maybe you need to take a bit of a look at yourself. I would ask Thunderfoot to perhaps just fucking take a look at what he's becoming, if he regards that as a suitable thing to make a video on. Now, there are subjects that are involved in that were worthy of perhaps discussing and worthy of criticising, if you want to score a few points there, which I can understand him wanting to do. And one of them involved JJ Talks, because she was peripheral to that, but she had made a video at the same time in which she'd said, hey, we criticise out-group members, guys, in the main, for sometimes being inappropriate, right, for making inappropriate comments, for sending pictures of their cocks through the fucking mail, etc, etc. But yeah, you kind of expect that on an entire internet. You're going to get some people that do that, but on our in-group, right, you wouldn't expect that. And she actually said it's almost as if what some of these sort of anti-feminists and MRAs say about white knight mangina types, that is almost kind of true, this kind of white knight thing, which is that she had experienced a couple of guys who had done just this fucking kind of thing, and not done it in the open forum, it turns out, of YouTube, but in private groups that just involved SJW types, right? So what she's saying is, there's hypocrites within our community. They're just as fucking bad. They'll make a video criticising this type of behaviour, then do the same fucking thing themselves, and she knew that because it had happened to her. Now, I think that is fertile ground for criticism. It's fertile ground for a Thunderfoot tweet or a Thunderfoot video, but surely the subject of the criticism there isn't JJ Talks, which is what he made it. It was the people that she was criticising. I thought he was wide of the mark there, and unreasonably wide of the mark. It was unwarranted, the criticism that he made of JJ Talks. That's how I read that. But the biggest criticism I want to make is regard to him and Anita Sarkeesian. So let's talk about Thunderfoot and Anita Sarkeesian. Thunderfoot does not like the fact, he doesn't like Anita Sarkeesian, but he seems to have this fucking obsession with Anita Sarkeesian. He can't let it go, such that he's gone beyond just criticising the arguments that she makes, but criticising anything that he can find about her, right? And what I don't understand is the thing that he criticises most about her is the fucking amount of money that she's raked in. And yet he must be Anita Sarkeesian's biggest benefactor. And he seems to be too fucking stupid. He's obviously a clever guy in his field, but he's too fucking stupid in this sense to realise quite what it is he is doing. It's almost as if, and I know that she won't appreciate this analogy, she is stood in front of him giving it a fucking titty dance, right? And he's just sticking wads of banknotes down the side of her thong, and he can't seem to resist himself as the fucking drool is coming down his chin, because that is kind of how it is panning out. For example, this whole thing, which I think chimes in with Bewildered Ape's video, which was the bomb threat that Anita Sarkeesian received. And she claims that she received this bomb threat. I think she received a bomb threat, right? I'm going to lay it out there. I think she received the bomb threat. I think the bomb threat happened. I think that she was told, yeah, I don't think you need to take this credibly. You can carry on. But she didn't. She cancelled the talk, and then she used it to her advantage. I don't blame her for using it to her advantage, right? Why the fuck wouldn't you? If it was me, I would use it to my advantage. It's what everybody is doing. She is monetizing her position. That doesn't make her position right or wrong, but she is monetizing it. The same as Richard Dawkins monetizes his position, doesn't he? He's monetized his stance, his gene-centered stance on evolutionary biology. In latter years, he has monetized his atheism. That doesn't make any of his arguments wrong, but he tries to make hard currency, hard cash out of his positions, and he tries to take full value out of any situation that chimes in with a point that he's trying to make. Of course, Anita Sarkeesian does that. Everybody, all people like that do that. You only have to look at Rebecca Watson's fucking channel. Her channel gets no more views than my videos get, but her Patreon gives her about $1,000 a fucking video. Is that because people can't wait to watch a Rebecca Watson video? Bollocks, is it? It's because she has successfully monetized her victimhood, right? The elevator gate thing and everything that happens, she has successfully milked the little udders of that for everything that she can get, and anybody can do that. With regard to Bewildered Ape's video, a guy called Zachary Amaranth made the same comment on Jenny's video that it's allowed Thunderfoot to do the same thing, that he can milk the little udders of that because it allows him to take on this victim status, and we can all do that, right? And we're all capable of doing that, and people on all sides do that. MRAs do that, feminists do that. It happens all over. And of course Anita Sarkeesian is doing that because she has made this her business. Let's forget about whether her arguments make any sense or not. But she has made that her business. This is her persona. This is her thing. This is what she is monetizing. Is her series with regard to video games, the stance with regard to video games. And she knows that she can get as many talks, right, and as many engagements out of her victimhood as she can about the things that she was actually talking about in the first place. So that when she has a bomb threat, it probably was intimidating. It probably isn't a very nice thing to happen, but that doesn't mean that at the end of it she cannot monetize it and she cannot tweak the little udders of what has happened there. And then what does Thunderfoot do? He just fucking... The thing to do if somebody has something like that is to say, do you know what, Anita Sarkeesian's had a bomb threat. It's a terrible thing. Nobody should ever be making bomb threats. We're right behind you, Anita. And then say absolutely nothing else about it anymore. If you keep harping on and on about it, that's just putting more little banknotes into the side of a thong. But what really puts those fucking $100 bills, right, it really tucks them right in there where it counts, is when you suggest that either she's fucking made it up or that she's milking it and that she's disingenuous about it and that she's being soft and that she should have carried on with the talk and that you don't show her any sympathy, you show antipathy, you rail against her for it, because that just plays into that whole victimhood thing. Honestly and truthfully, I don't think anybody has done more, any individual has done more for Anita Sarkeesian and the cult of Anita Sarkeesian than Thunderfoot, and yet he keeps doing it and doing it and doing it. He needs to get a fucking grip of himself, in my opinion. If he wants to criticise Anita Sarkeesian, stick to the arguments and never go beyond the arguments. Think on this. If when Anita Sarkeesian started her Kickstarter, if nobody had criticised it, if nobody had mentioned it other than those people that wanted to support it, what fraction of the success that she has had do you think that she would have had? She'd have got some money, she'd have got some backing, she'd have started making a trope series that have had a few views, and that would have been it. It's been an order of magnitude larger than it would have been if everybody had just shut the fuck up about it, if nobody had made any threats, if nobody had made any comments, if nobody had felt the need to attack her as a person about it. Everybody who has done that with a view to trying to knock her down a bit has just built her up and up and up and up and up. And that is just so how somebody with the supposed intellect of Thunderfoot can play so readily into her hands, to enable her to monetize what she does when that clearly isn't what he wants to do, beggars belief as far as I am concerned. So that deals with Thunderfoot, that deals with Anita Sarkeesian. Okay, so I took a break there, partly to wipe the sweat off my brow and to make myself a coffee because it is stinking hot in here with these softbox lights on. It's a hot summer's day. I've got the window shut because otherwise my neighbour David will be thinking, what the fuck, who the fuck is Jim shouting at there? So I have to get the window shut. It's absolutely roasting hot in here, so I apologise for that. Right, so now I want to move on to what was the main meat of the video, which was Jenny's video and then Bewildered Ape's video. So I want to talk about Jenny's video first, so I'm kind of going back. I'm not doing these in chronological order. Jenny made this video, Atheism is Not Great, in which she defended Bewildered Ape's use of satire. And what she also tried to do is to compare the way in which people have responded and said, well, what Bewildered Ape has done is in bad taste. Compare that with the response that Christopher Hitchens made to the death of Jerry Falwell. So let's just compare those two things there. Bear in mind, so what Bewildered Ape has done is he has satirised the cancer, Thunderfoot's father's cancer, in a way to try and score a point against Thunderfoot. That is effectively, brutally what he's done. He's used Thunderfoot's dad's cancer to score a point against Thunderfoot. And I think along the lines of, we talked about Anita Sarkeesian and the bombing, it's along those lines of that kind of thing. Thunderfoot, he obviously regards Thunderfoot as being somewhat unsympathetic to Anita Sarkeesian, for example, receiving a bomb threat, and also to perhaps rape victims with regard to some of the things that he said with regard to rape, and said, right, I'm going to show you the same lack of sympathy and show you why the comments you've made are not unwarranted but unacceptable. I think that's where the satire lies. If I'm wrong on that, then somebody, perhaps Bewildered Ape himself, can explain what he did mean. So that's kind of what he's done. And Jenny McDermott said, well, if you find that unacceptable, why aren't we finding the comments that Hitchens made with regard to Jerry Falwell as unacceptable? Atheists are hypocritical with regard to this. I think that Jenny is fundamentally wrong, because I think the two things are very, very different. And in fact, had either way round, right? Either way round. If Bewildered Ape wanted to slag Thunderfoot off and wanted to say what a total cunt he regards Thunderfoot as, I wouldn't be criticising him for that. I'd be saying, you go ahead. You're entitled to do that on YouTube. And I think that Thunderfoot would say the same. He might disagree with the substance of it, but he'd say you're entitled to do that on YouTube. And even if Thunderfoot himself had just dropped dead, right, and people on YouTube were making videos eulogising Thunderfoot, there would be people on YouTube, and Bewildered Ape might be one of them, saying, no, actually, I thought he was a total wanker when he was alive, and I still think he's a total wanker, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, and I don't know whether Thunderfoot would have a problem with that. I'm damn sure Christopher fucking Hitchens wouldn't have a problem with that. If Christopher Hitchens, looking at it the other way, if Christopher Hitchens had a go at Jerry Falwell while Jerry Falwell was alive on the grounds that Jerry Falwell's father or his mother had cancer, and used that to gain leverage, used the cancer of Jerry Falwell's father to score points against Jerry Falwell, I would find that way more out of order than what he did do. What Hitchens did do is Fox News. Jerry Falwell had died. Fox News wanted somebody that was going to say something really bad about Jerry Falwell, so they could say, oh my god, how can you possibly say something bad about Jerry Falwell? What about the fucking relatives? That's going to hurt the relatives, right? They wanted to score that point, so they were quite prepared. Fox News were quite prepared for Jerry Falwell's relatives to be hurt. They're like, let's find somebody who's going to say something that's going to hurt Jerry Falwell's relatives, and then we'll put it on the news. So they went to Christopher Hitchens because they fucking knew what Christopher Hitchens was going to say. What's Christopher Hitchens supposed to do? Is Christopher Hitchens supposed to say, well, I've always spoke really badly about Jerry Falwell. I've always thought he was a total fucking cunt. But now he's dead, I'm just going to say a load of really, really nice things about Jerry Falwell and what a marvellous person he was. Of course he wasn't. He had to stick to his line, which was that Jerry Falwell was this terrible fucking person, right? And that is what he did. And I don't really think you can blame him for that. The one thing where I think he overstepped the mark was that when Fox News asked him, well, what about his relatives? Do you think that could hurt his relatives? What he should have said was something along the lines of, yes, I do, and I'm sorry about that. I have no truck with Jerry Falwell's relatives, and I'm not saying this to hurt Jerry Falwell's relatives, but you can't expect me to not say this. You can't expect me to lie just on the basis of Jerry Falwell's relatives. You've asked me the question, I've got to answer it honestly. If you didn't want Jerry Falwell's relatives to be hurt, you shouldn't have asked me the fucking question. That is what he should have said, and that was where he overstepped the mark. Now, where I agreed with Jenny on a video was that she showed a tweet that Anita Sarkeesian, we're back to Anita Sarkeesian again, a tweet that Anita Sarkeesian had made following Christopher Hitchens' death, where she had said, Christopher Hitchens, everybody's saying nice things about him, he was a sexist, a racist and a warmonger. And Thunderfoot picked up on that and made a video on that because he's obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian. He cannot resist something to get his teeth into. And I think Thunderfoot was wrong with regard to that. He was fucking wrong with regard to that. If Anita Sarkeesian doesn't like Christopher Hitchens when he's alive, she's entitled to still not like Christopher Hitchens the day he dies, and to say what a wanker she thinks Christopher Hitchens is on the day he died. And I am absolutely certain that Christopher Hitchens would have no problem with that. That said, that tweet said a lot more to me. It spoke volumes more to me about Anita Sarkeesian than it did. It didn't tell me really anything about Christopher Hitchens. It told me a lot more about Anita Sarkeesian. And it also threw into sharp contrast to me the difference between the things that I admire about people like Christopher Hitchens and I don't admire, that I look down on about people like Anita Sarkeesian, is that I know that Christopher Hitchens' response to that would have been, had he not been dead, okay, let's discuss these things, and this is what you're bringing. Let's have a debate about that, because one thing you can never accuse him of is running shy of a debate, and the one thing that you can never accuse Anita Sarkeesian of is running into a fucking debate. She would rather just give you her opinion and then just really leave it at that. She doesn't really want to debate things, and I'm damn sure she wouldn't want to debate the comments she'd made about Christopher Hitchens with Christopher Hitchens. So anyway, this was the thrust of Jenny McDermott's video, and that she was trying to defend Bewildered Ape for making this satire video. She said something at the end. Let me show you what she said at the end.
As for goals, Bewildered Ape has no goal, at least no grand goal that we can point to as the primary reason he made the video. Perhaps we can ascribe him a collection of different goals, some of which Zachary Amaranth mentions in his video, and some that others have mentioned in the past. Why should Bewildered Ape have a goal beyond the creative choices he made when producing the video?
The reason I show you that, am I the only one who watches that and thinks, what a load of bullshit? I mean, most of Jenny's videos, some I agreed with, some I didn't, but it made sense. But this bit, it took me back to my university days, way back. I mean, we did have universities in those days, before anybody says, back in the century where I grew up, right? And I shared a house with several people, and one of them studied fine art. And this is the kind of shite that he came out with all the fucking time. It sounded really, really profound, but it was just absolute bullshit. And once we got to know him for a few months, at first we were like, "Oh, that sounds really good." And after a bit we realised it was just bullshit. And he admitted in the end, most of what he said was just bullshit, but he'd say, "Yeah, but it sounds good, doesn't it?" Why should BA have a goal beyond the creative choices he made in the video? That's just like saying, well, why does it have to have a reason? Maybe it just exists art for art's sake. It's just like kind of visual wallpaper. It's just sounds and noises and shapes and colours just dancing across the screen for our entertainment. But that isn't what satire is supposed to be, is it? Isn't satire supposed to have a purpose? It is to throw into relief the shortcomings and the failings of people or of organisations or of governments. Isn't that the purpose of satire? It isn't supposed to exist just as some kind of audio-visual wallpaper there. So I really didn't get that. But Jenny McDermott's main defence of Bewildered Ape was this, well, it's satire sort of defence. And I said, fucking defence that I hear all the time. Right, this is, well, it's satire, so that's kind of makes it all right. And I've spoken with Bewildered Ape on this recently, only a few weeks ago, and I made the point to him that it reminds me of the It's Christmas defence. And if you don't know what I mean, have a look at this little clip from the Harry Enfield television show.
Office manager, sir, you're out of boots. Is it alright if I open this? It's aftershave. Ah, come on! It's Christmas! Good stuff. Sir, is it alright if I stagger into and smash your table? It's an heirloom, actually. Oh, come on! It's Christmas! Alright, darling. Sir, is it alright if I shaft your wife? Oh, come on! It's Christmas! Hi, you. Yes, you. You just shattered my fish box. Hey, it's Christmas!
So is there, well, it's satire, is that a defence or isn't it a defence? That's what I want to explore here. I think it's fair to say at this point that we've moved beyond Jenny's video. We're firmly in the territory of Bewildered Ape's video. And Bewildered Ape had made this video, it's a month ago now, something like that, in which he had made the claim that Thunderfoot had said his father had cancer. Bewildered Ape had made the claim that that is false, that Thunderfoot is lying about that, that Thunderfoot is using that to increase his kind of victim quotient, to garner our sympathies and garner our support, our emotional support, maybe our support on Patreon, okay, so get our money or our support or our views off him. He's using it to his advantage, and that it isn't true, that his father doesn't actually have cancer. Now, I don't really know what Bewildered Ape's thoughts on it, but what I do know is that this video is obviously satirical. He isn't making this as a genuine claim. We are not supposed to say, bloody hell, is this true? Thunderfoot's father really doesn't have cancer. What Bewildered Ape is doing is he is cashing in on Thunderfoot's father's cancer and utilising that as a vehicle to make his point to Thunderfoot that some of the things that Thunderfoot has done, perhaps the idea of the bombing and the comments that Thunderfoot has made with regard to Anita Sarkeesian and the bomb threat, that they are equally objectionable, that he finds those distasteful, and it's more or less in the same way as this. So the question is the satire defence acceptable? Well, in some circumstances a defence of satire clearly is acceptable. There was a comedy character, for example, in British comedy that went throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s called Alf Garnett, who was played by a Jewish guy, Warren Mitchell, who was fiercely anti-Semitic, fiercely racist, bigoted, homophobic within the series, and said things which most of us would regard as unacceptable, and it caused quite a lot of controversy. How can somebody be allowed to say these things on television? But the point was the Alf Garnett character was there to be ridiculed. It wasn't for us to laugh at his bigotry, but to laugh at the fact that he was bigoted. It was the things that he said, the objectionable way, the things that he said, and often how hypocritical it was that some of the things that he said actually applied to him, and the fact that it was played by a Jewish actor who looked quite Jewish and sounded like a kind of East London Jew in the character that he was portraying. He amplified the ridiculous nature of the character and the satirical nature of the comedy that we were watching. So there are certainly circumstances in which you can say things in a satirical capacity which you couldn't say or couldn't say without legitimate criticism being levelled at you in a normal capacity, because you're doing it to throw some light on them. But surely that doesn't mean that you can just do literally anything, right? That, for example, if I was to punch somebody in the face, smash somebody round the fucking nose, right on the beak, right? That's unacceptable. And to smash somebody on the beak and then say, well, I'm doing it out of satire, I'm trying to show a certain context, I've hit you on the nose because you're a woman, I'm trying to satirise domestic violence, it doesn't make it any more acceptable, because at the end of the day, I have punched somebody in the face. And if punching somebody in the face is unacceptable, in and of itself, then it's unacceptable in any context. And I hold that there are some things which are like that. And that's where I have a problem with Bewildered Ape's channel, because I'm told that it's this really highbrow satire channel. But where does the satire end? For example, was an open letter to Thunderfoot's employer, was that video satire? Does he really not mean? He suggested in that video that Thunderfoot was a Holocaust denier and supported genocide, for example. So is that satirical, or does he really believe those things about Thunderfoot? In that context, it seems to me that it doesn't really matter. Satire isn't a defence, because in just the same way as punching somebody on the nose, whether it's satire or not, you've punched somebody on the nose. Whether Bewildered Ape genuinely thought those things about Thunderfoot or not, it makes no odds, in fact, because he's still at the end of the day written a letter to somebody's employer. In fact, and this is kind of where it gets interesting in some ways, the satire element, rather than being a defence, actually makes what you've done considerably worse. I imagine if somebody had written a letter to my employer to say that I was a Holocaust denier, if I felt that they had grounds to believe it, or at least that they genuinely felt that, whilst I wouldn't think that it was the right thing to do, at least I could have some sympathy as to why they'd done it, some understanding. But if they'd done it in a satirical way, in other words, if they didn't even fucking believe it, they were telling my employer, right, oh, this guy that works for you is a Holocaust denier, and they don't even believe it. They're just doing it to make some point that is only tangentially related. Well, that's even fucking worse, isn't it? That doesn't make it better, that just makes it worse. And it's the same thing with this thing with regard to Thunderfoot's father. If Bewildered Ape genuinely thought that Thunderfoot was lying about his father and was right thinking, fucking hell, this guy's making this up, right? His father isn't really dying of cancer, and he's just doing it to get our sympathy. And I've got good evidence to show this, and I need everybody to know about this, because what a terrible, abhorrent thing to do. Then I could kind of understand it. But if he doesn't have that, if he's just using it to cash in on this situation, to score a cheap shot, to make some tangentially related point, I don't think that makes it better. I don't think the satire element makes it better. In actual fact, I think it makes it substantially worse. And that's kind of like the problem that I have with this. And so this is where it kind of goes full circle and goes back to Thunderfoot's video, and where I'm not sure that the satire really works, because what Bewildered Ape is saying, I think, is for the same reason that you're going to find my video objectionable, that is why I find Thunderfoot's videos objectionable. But the reason that I find Bewildered Ape's video so objectionable is because I know that he doesn't really believe it. If he did genuinely believe that Thunderfoot was lying, I wouldn't find his video half as objectionable. And so I can only find Thunderfoot's videos objectionable on the same grounds if I entertain the idea that Thunderfoot is saying these things and doesn't fucking believe them. So unless that is the call that Bewildered Ape is making, that Thunderfoot is doing the same thing that he has done, he's cashed in on Thunderfoot's dad's cancer, and he's saying, yes, but Thunderfoot is cashing in on these other things and portraying opinions, making out that he believes things that he really doesn't believe. Unless that is what he's saying, then I think his argument falls short, and he is the one that has done the objectionable thing. Maybe some of the things that Thunderfoot has said has been objectionable, but for a whole different set of reasons, and that need to be considered in an entirely different way. If what Bewildered Ape said is true, and actually Thunderfoot doesn't believe a lot of the things that he says with regard to rape, doesn't believe a lot of things he says with regard to Anita Sarkeesian, particularly perhaps with regard to the bomb threat, then fuck him, because then he has done exactly the same thing that Bewildered Ape has done here. So fuck him if that is what he's done. But I haven't seen any evidence that actually convinces me of that, whereas it's quite clear with Bewildered Ape that that is the situation with regard to him, because the video is satire, and if he genuinely believed it, then the video wouldn't be satire, would it? So by claiming satire, he's effectively fallen on his sword. He's admitted his guilt with regard to that. Well, I think I've pretty much got everything that I wanted to say on my tiny writing on my bits of paper there. Thank you for listening if you've listened this long, and bye for now.